Hi, everyone. Welcome to Morning Matcha. Today, I'm here with a special guest, Angela Kelly, who's the founder of GutsyMother, and we're going to talk a lot about antibiotic resistance, C. diff, and all sorts of things. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikki. This is so exciting.
I'm so happy that we can share this information with people and that I can learn more about everything you're up to and C. diff and all the other things that you're working on. So
Thanks. So gut health is so incredibly important. Almost 2 years ago, so I had no idea what C. diff was. I had never heard of it. And most Americans haven't heard
yeah, you'll have to tell us what it is.
what C. diff is. So C. diff is usually if you take an antibiotic, it will disrupt your gut flora, and it gives C. diff, which is a bacteria, room to really grow out of control and take over your gut and cause all sorts of horrible problems, one of which is really terrible diarrhea. And people don't usually want to talk about diarrhea, even though we've all had it. So it's a huge problem in America. There's at least 500,000 cases per year. But that's a low number because we're not reporting cases that are in the community. So these are cases that are coming to the hospital and being counted. But then some reports say that as many as 40% of infections are starting in the community. So those infections aren't being reported. And then also it's becoming now a community-acquired infection. So it's just out in the community. And you can actually, now more people are picking it up without being on antibiotics.
Oh, wow.
And so children are now also being affected. There's, on the low side again, because we don't really know how many infections there are, there's about 17,000 pediatric infections per year.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's also
nationwide?
Yes, nationwide. But then it's also affecting peripartum, so pregnant women and recently postpartum women. Because if you go into a hospital and you're pregnant and you have a baby and you end up being in the hospital for a little bit, so it's healthcare acquired, and then you're on an antibiotic, you can end up, the spores are in the environment. C. diff spores last for a very long time in the environment, up to 2 years. So everything needs to be cleaned with bleach or with UV lights to kill the spores. So they can end up coming home with you in your gut. You've been on antibiotics. The next thing you know, you have a new baby and a C. diff infection.
And that's what happened to you, right?
That is most likely. Our family, so my family, experienced an endemic C. diff outbreak, which lasted for 6 months. So I had been in the hospital and I had my third baby, and we came home and everything was good and wonderful. And then my husband was on antibiotics following a surgery. He started having diarrhea. We told his doctor, and his doctor said, that's sometimes a side effect of antibiotics. I mean, we've all heard that. Everybody takes yogurt or you eat yogurt with your antibiotic.
Did he do that?
Yeah.
So he was taking eating probiotics.
But if you get C. diff, it's like even like eating yogurt with like C. diff, it's like shooting a bullet at a train. It's not gonna do much. So then shortly after my husband started experiencing that, my 3-year-old, who had not been on antibiotics, started having bloody mucousy diarrhea 10 times a day. I brought her into her doctor and I said, what is this? What is this? This is not okay. And they said, oh, it's probably toddler's diarrhea. And then it went on for another week or maybe like 4 days. And then she said, let's test for C. diff. I don't think it's C. diff, but let's test for it. And I say, what is C. diff?
Yeah.
So then I go on Dr. Google and I'm Googling, and then it says horrible, deadly intestinal infection that kills, it kills 20%, like 29,000 in the first 30 days of getting it. 29,000 people die in the first 30 days of getting it. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me?
What did you do when you read that? Like, were you crying? Were you up?
I was thinking there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way that my 3-year-old daughter has the number one urgent threat from the CDC superbug.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then they called me back that night and they said she has C. diff. So we started her on an antibiotic called Flagyl, which is no longer part of the treatment guidelines, the SHEA. So the Infectious Disease Society of America, they changed the guidelines. So Flagyl is no longer considered a first line to treat C. diff, which is very important that people know because it knocks out the rest of the good gut bacteria. And then with C. diff, it can keep recurring over and over again because you knock out the antibiotics, kill the good gut flora, and then you take more antibiotics to kill the C. diff, so then it just grows back. So so there's different treatments for it now.
How did you educate yourself on all the resistance? I mean, if this is what your doctor is telling you to do, is take that antibiotic, which is the wrong one, and then I know later you took the right one. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. So people don't. We're lagging behind. We're lagging behind on C. diff, which is incredibly unfortunate. We need, especially now that it's out in the community and so many people are getting it, everybody needs to know about it. And everybody needs to know the risk that they are taking when they take an antibiotic. So if someone's taking an antibiotic for a self-diagnosed sinus infection or a terrible cough or a really sore throat that could be strep, they need to realize the risk that they are taking. They need to be ready to deal with the consequences of that, which could be a horrible superbug infection that, I mean, we disappeared off the face of the planet for 6 months. People thought that we moved.
Oh my gosh.
People thought that, I had people ask me if I had cancer because I went from 132 pounds postpartum to 112 pounds in less than 2 months. My hair was falling out. I couldn't, it was an absolute disaster. So doctors are lagging behind and we need to keep them up on the research. There's different treatments now. There's an antibiotic called fidaxomicin, which it's very expensive, but it is targeted to the C. diff bacteria. And so it helps keep it from turning into spores and hiding because it hides in spore form inside your intestines. And then it's just there waiting
to get activated,
waiting to be activated and waiting to have that room. So it's waiting there until you take antibiotics again to wake up.
But now you're saying people who even don't take antibiotics even are susceptible to it.
Yes. So there's different strains of it now where it's getting to be stronger, more aggressive. And then also people in the community were eating different. And so researchers think there's a sweetener called trehalose, which is, it's a thickener and a sweetener, and it's in ice cream and it's in toothpaste. And it came out it used to be more expensive to make, but they made it a lot cheaper. And then they just put it in everything in 2007.
Of course.
And it coincides with the beginning of this huge C. diff explosion. Okay. So there may be something.
So it feeds the C. diff.
Yes.
That's what they think. Or
they think that it feeds C. diff. And then also we're altering our microbiomes. People are taking PPIs like it's candy for, reflux and things like this.
What's PPI? Like Tums or something? Or
like acid suppressors. Okay. Like if you're having heartburn or things like that, it makes your stomach, so it's your stomach acid, so it's not so acidic, that's your part of your defense against things like that. And then also, who knows with eating all these foods that are raised with antibiotics, who knows,
if the animals are.
Yeah, they're pumping all these. So if you you want to buy foods that are not raised with antibiotics. Because who knows, they're giving all these massive amounts of antibiotics to keep the animals not sick when they're like really sick and make them fat. And then what is it doing to our microbiome?
Yeah. And can it be transferred through water?
It can.
Like with, so on a farm with the livestock or like even here?
Yes. Yeah. So you can, C. diff is actually it's been found in lots of foods. So it's the spores and C. diff. It's found in like ground turkey, especially. It's on lettuce. But C. diff is everywhere. It's like,
Great.
like they found, researchers found just tons of it in like children's sand pits, like at the parks.
Okay, yeah.
It's all over parks. It's on shopping cart handles. It's obviously in bathrooms. It's, there's all these, it's on the bottom of people's shoes a lot. So you're going to be exposed to it. And that's the thing is you don't know if you have the spores in your gut. You're just going along and everything's great until you take an antibiotic. And people don't realize that. There's also another superbug threat is CRE.
I've never heard of that.
Carbamazepine resistant enterobacocci, I think is how you say it. But it's the nightmare bacteria that was never supposed to really make it to the U.S. And they found a couple hundred cases in New York. And they said, oh, we're never going to let it get out of New York.
Like recently? Or?
Yes. And in the last year, like Lester Holt was on NBC and he says, don't take antibiotics. There's a danger in taking antibiotics. But then he didn't really elaborate on it. And I'm going,
Tell people.
Say why. But it's just such a complicated issue. But then CRE's here now. CRE's here in California. So there's a CDC program called Shield OC where they're trying to keep CRE from proliferating into nursing home long-term care facilities. Because C. diff is
in nursing homes.
It's in nursing homes and in these long-term care facilities. And doctors and nurses in the healthcare system knew it was there, but nobody was really talking about it, which is terribly sad.
Yeah, these are at-risk people. I mean, we're talking about old people, elderly people, children, women who have just given birth or pregnant women. I mean, it's ridiculous that
it's not okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And people need to be given the opportunity to protect themselves. They need to know that this is a huge risk. When you go into the hospital, you need to know how to protect yourself. And so you need to remember the hospital isn't your home. You don't live there. It's where really sick people go to be treated. And there's dangerous things there. And you need to have your partner put on gloves, ask for germicidal wipes, which they use. They're different than just like wipes that you get in the store that are like for cleaning your kitchen. They have higher concentrated bleach in them, which kills the C. diff spores. So you can ask them for the hospital germicidal wipes, wipe down the bed rails, wipe down, bathroom points, high touch points, and then take a probiotic if you're going to be in the hospital. Take a really a high quality probiotic, not something off like a store shelf.
Yeah. Let's get into, I want to talk about probiotics, but first I want to talk about what measures do they take in the hospitals to prevent it? If we know that bleach and UV light can kill the spores, do they clean with that?
So they do clean with it. And it is a very hard thing to tackle. We have a massive population who's coming in and out. So it is an environmental services problem where, you need your staff to be appropriately cleaning and they have to be trained. And there's a lot of communication that goes into that. And also putting people on quarantine, which they do. I was on quarantine.
You were?
Yes. And my daughter was.
Self-appointed or?
No. So my daughter, because hers was a recurrent infection. So she was 3 and had 6 months of C. diff. So she was on a vancomycin taper, which is where you let the spores wake up and then you kill them with